Okay, first thing you want to do is you want to click on the Premiere icon, the PR, the purple icon, and that'll open up Premiere. That'll be on Windows or Mac. And then what you want to do is you want to go to New Project. Okay, so when you go to New Project, pretty much the most important thing in this entire sequence is making sure it's saved to your folder. Okay, so what you want to do is you want to give it a name up here. We'll just call it Project 1. And right here in Location, that's where you want to go. Let's go Browse just so you can see how it works. Go to Desktop. You're going to find wherever your folder is, and that's where you click Your Folder, and you click Choose. And then what you want to do is you want to go over to Scratch Disks, and all these things right here, you want to make sure they say Same as Project. So if it's set to Documents or Custom, make sure they're all set to Same as Project. That's going to make sure that everything is saving into your folder. The reason why that's important is because you'll probably be working on projects on a shared computer, so you want to make sure that at all times, as best you can, be saving all of your projects and files into your folder. That way you don't get confused, nobody else gets confused. And you just hit OK. And here we go. Okay, so Premiere is like any other software. There's when you're looking at the software, there's about 50 to 100 things you're looking at, but really there are only about 10 to 15 things that you need to know to get started. So we're gonna go over those 10 to 15 things right now and make it as simple as possible. Okay, so first thing to do is just take a look at the layout. The layout, Adobe's term for the layout is actually, if you go up here to Window, it's called Workspace. Okay, so in terms of Adobe's language, this right here, what you're looking at is called the Workspace. Okay, so now you have different types of workspaces up here. We are going to be using editing. Occasionally you might click Assembly or Color or Effects, and you can see it changes the workspace. So the main one we're going to start working from, and we'll pretty much be staying in, is editing. So taking a look at the workspace, I like to use the analogy of doing a painting. When you're doing a painting, you got your paints, you maybe have like this area where you're kind of sketching or mixing the paint, and then you have your actual canvas where you're putting together the final product, okay? So over here, the windows that you're looking at, this window right here, which it's called the project window, this is where your media is going to go. That's going to be your paints. That's going to be kind of what you're working with. Up here, this window that Premiere calls the source window. Okay, this source window is where you're kind of going to be mixing things and previewing your media. So you got your media here. You're going to double click on your media, and you're going to be previewing it up here, and you're going to be using these in and out points right here a lot. And then over here, the window called the program window, that's kind of your final product. That's the main canvas. And then down here, the timeline, since we're working with time, not space, the timeline is where you're going to be moving around your video and audio files. So to the right here is pretty much the final product. And over here, this is where you're kind of, these are your paints, and this is kind of where you'll be sketching and previewing files. And then right here in the middle, these are your tools. The main tools you're going to use are the arrow tool and the razor tool you might be using. There are two other windows we're going to want to get very used to toggling between, going to. First one is down here. It's a window called Effects. Effects is where your audio effects, your video effects are going to be. Your anything like green screen. If you want to change a clip to a different color, change it to black and white, all that kind of stuff, that's down here in this effects, this little effects window here. This window actually was, when I opened it up, it began over here. You can move these around. Since I go to this effects window a lot, I just moved it over here so it was close to my project window. Okay, so effects is one to get used to going to. And the second one to get used to going to, you're going to be going to this one all the time, is up here next to source. There's a window called Effect Controls. Effect Controls, you're going to be going to that a lot. Effect Controls is where you're going to go in there to you can go in there to change the volume of clips. You'll be going in there to change the size, the rotation of clips, all kinds of different things. So aside from what we're kind of just seeing, when we first open the program, we go to the editing mode. This is what we see. So we're going to be using these windows a lot, and the two other ones we're going to be going to are Effects down here and Effect Controls. Okay, so we're ready to get started editing something here, but we don't have anything to edit, so we need to bring in our media. Our media sometimes can also be referred to as assets. That's ASSETS. So depending on who you're talking to, they could be referring it as media or footage or assets. But whatever you want to call it, we got to bring them in. So what we want to do is we're going to go down here, click on the project window, and we're going to import. So we just go File, Import. And then we're just going to our folder, and here are our media assets. I'm going to bring in 2 of each type of media. And so I'm going to grab here's 2 audio files. Here are 2 pictures. Here are 2 video clips that don't have audio. And here are 2 video clips that do have audio being sound. And then I'm just going to click import. All right, so what's the first thing we notice about the media that we just imported? They have different, depending on what type of media it is, it has a different logo to the left. You can see the ones that are pictures, the beach, and the city. Those have this little logo that looks like shapes, basically. So that's the logo for pictures. This logo right here, this is a film strip. That purple thing is a film strip. And the green thing is just an audio waveform. So anything that has a purple film strip and an audio waveform, that's going to be a video clip that also has audio attached to it. Anything that just has the purple film strip is obviously just going to be video without audio. And then down here, guess what that's going to be? That's going to be anytime you bring in music or sound effects, it's going to look like this. It's going to be a green waveform. So those are just audio files with no video or pictures associated with it. Depending on how you like to work, you can also change the way these clips are viewed down here in the project window. So right now it's in list view. It's highlighted in list view. If you go right here, you can go to icon view. Icon view means if there's an image associated with it that you can view, it will show you that image. So the picture will show you the picture. On the video clips, you can actually, if you drag over top of them, you can scroll through them and you can kind of see what the video clips look like. So yeah, icon view, list view. Okay, now that we have our media in here, let's put this this source window to use. Okay, so the source window again is mostly it's the source window. You could also think of it as as a preview window. So this is where we can preview the files we just brought in. Okay, so to preview something, all you want to do is you want to double click on it, and you want to double click the logo. Okay, double click, 1, 2, bring it up, and you can see it automatically sets it to at about 5 seconds. So when you bring a picture in, Premiere gives you about 5 seconds of that picture up here. You could obviously make it longer, but that's what it gives you automatically. Okay, so we get the beach. Double click on this one. Double click on the logo, not on the word, on the logo. Double click New York City. Double click on this one. This one has video and audio associated with it. So it says assembly line. Double click. What do we got? Assembly line. You can see, so I can play. If I hit play, we'll play the video clip, or I can drag the playhead. This blue thing's called the playhead. I can drag through it. If I want to sample it in a different way, I go back and forth. All right, so we got an assembly line. Next one. This one is just going to be, since it doesn't have this the green squiggly audio associated with it, we double click on trees, and when it pops up, as you can see, trees. Next one, video plus audio, waterfall. Double click it, pops up. Waterfall, and you can hear the audio there, or we can play if we want to hear it. Next one, just video, no audio of the city. Double click it. There we go. And finally, what do you think is going to happen when we click on just the audio? We double click it. It shows us the audio. There's no image there because there is no image. It's just audio. So we can drag to a certain point in time, hit play, hit stop. Now let's just check out this final one. This was a sound effect. Double click it, double click the logo, not the word, hit play. All right. Okay, so we have our files in here. We've previewed our files. Now, are we ready to start doing the final canvas? Are we ready to start editing over here? Yes, I think we are. Okay, so what we need to do is we need to create a sequence over here. The window is called a timeline, and inside the timeline window, Premiere calls it a sequence. Okay, so right here it's asking, it says drop media here to create a sequence. Okay, so we could do that. We're going to do that. But first I want to show you guys, if I wasn't going to drop the media over here, the other way to create a sequence is you go over here, and this little thing says New Item. You click on New Item, and you can go up here and choose Sequence. Okay, so if we were to do that and choose Sequence, Now, what it brings up is basically it brings up all these folders with all these different sequence options. These sequence options are basically related to different camera formats. So let's say you've probably heard of the red camera. So if we open up the red camera folder, wow, it's just more folders. Okay, so these are all different types of formats based on footage you can film in. So this is, if you're filming on 4K, you can open up this 4K. And you can see it's basically showing you the size of the frame. It's showing you the aspect ratio of the frame, 16:9 or 2:1. And then it's also showing you the frame rate, whether it's 23 frames a second, 24, 25, 29, 30. So a lot of options in here. That's why the best thing to do is, especially if you're a beginner, hit cancel. And the best thing to do to create a sequence to start editing is you go over here to your video files. And so we got 4 video files here. And let's look at the frame rate. Okay, so we got a 24 frame, 25 frame a second, and then we got 2 29s. Okay, since the 29s outweigh the 24 and the 25, let's just make a sequence that is 29 frames a second. Easiest way to do that is to do exactly what it's asking us to do. Drop media here to create sequence. So we take this little clip here, click, hold, drag, drop, created the sequence. And here's our video clip. Hit play, hit spacebar or play. And it starts playing the clip. Okay, now we're getting there. And we can kind of start seeing how this is going to look. We can see what Premiere is going to look like. Premiere, if anybody who's ever edited audio before, a video editing program works the same way as an audio editing program, except it has video and audio. As you can see over here, it has these tracks called V1, V2, V3, and it keeps going. A1, A2, A3. Any guesses what V and A mean? V is video, A is audio. Okay, so let's just check this real quick. Let's see what all these files look like when we drag them over. All right, so we got V-City over here. Let's just delete it real quick. Let's just go from the top again. Let's drag the beach over, beach pic over. Guess what it looks like? It's beach picture, and it's about 5 seconds long. Like, remember we checked it up here, it was 5 seconds. Looks like it's the same. It's about 5 seconds. And as you can see, when you drag it over, it only drags over something in the V layer. There's nothing audio attached to it because it's just a video file. As you can see here, there's these things we'll get used to called the bracket tools. If we want to make it longer than 5 seconds, we can just drag it out, and there it goes. So that's what the beach picture looks like. New York City is going to look the same way. We drag it over. It's 5 seconds long. We can make it longer if we want to, but it's just a video clip. I mean, it's technically an image, but it's going to play as a video clip because it's going to go through time. It's going to move through time. Let's delete that. So what do you think is going to happen when we drag a video and audio clip over? Surprise, surprise. It drags over a video element and let's see, keep existing settings. It's dragging over a video element and an audio element because they're attached. The audio portion is attached to the video. So when we play it, we're seeing the same thing that we saw up here in the preview window, but now we're just actually seeing the audio clip and the video clip. Okay, so let's delete. Let's drag over this one, this trees one. This one doesn't have audio, so what's it going to look like? It's just going to be a video clip. It'll pop up in a second. There we go. All right, so there's the video clip, but no audio attached to it because there is no audio. All right, so delete that. Okay, and finally, when we go over to the audio tracks, let's do the 80s type beat. When we drag the audio track over, what's going to happen? Guess what? It only drags over into the audio track. There is no video track, so there's nothing above it. So when we play it, we hear the audio in the timeline. We play it, we hear the audio as it shows over here, but you see no video because there is no video track associated with it. We would have to add in a picture of a beach if we wanted to see video with the audio. Now we're getting there. Okay, so shortly we will get into actually making something here, but before we do that, we're going to talk about cutting. Editing is many things, but editing fundamentally is cutting. So in Premiere, there are 3 basic ways that you will actually be cutting clips. You will want to know all 3 of them. Depending on the scenario, you will end up using all 3. Okay, the first one, let's drag over let's drag over our waterfall clip. Okay, so we've got our waterfall clip, and let's just watch it real quick. Now, let's say we don't want it to be that long, but we really like the middle section. We really like the middle section. Okay, so what we do to make a cut, easiest way to make a cut is you take your mouse and you take it to if you take it to the beginning of the clip, it turns into this little bracket tool. The bracket tool, you can click down, hold, and drag to where your playhead is, and it will just make the cut. Now that video clip did not go away. It's still there. It's just temporarily erased for your purposes. And then let's say you're happy with that and you want it to end, let's say you want it to end right around here. Do the same thing. Drag to the end of the clip, turns into a bracket tool, drag, let go, you made your cut. Okay, so bracket tool, that's the first way to make a cut. Second way, let's drag the bracket tool and let's go back to our original clip. Okay, second way to make a cut. We can go to where we want to make the cut, and we're going to use our razor tool. So we click on the razor tool, we make our cut, it makes the cut. Then we drag later in time, we make our second cut, click, it makes the cut. Now, finally, to get rid of those pieces, we got to go back to our mouse selection tool, and we click on these clips, and then we just hit delete. So you can see that the razor tool method will come in handy often, but it does add a few more steps because you have to click between these two tools. All right, so what's the third way to make a cut? The third way to make a cut is in the beginning it will seem a little unorthodox, but once you get used to it, you will actually probably use this method more than anything. So the third way to make a cut is to actually not make the cut down here in the timeline, but it's to go up here into the source window or the preview window. Premiere calls it the source window. And what we're going to do is we're going to use these things right here. It's called the mark in point tool and the mark out point tool. So to actually use these tools, what we're going to do is we're going to take that clip, the waterfall clip, we're going to double click on it, double click on the icon, not the words, but the icon. Double click, brings it up in here. All right, now we can take the playhead and we can drag it to where we want. We can drag it all the way through. Let's say we say, you know what, I like this from here to here. So what we do is we go to where we want our endpoint to be, and we click in. You can see this little part is shaded out right here. So what we've done is we've just told the computer we're going to say we want to isolate starting at that endpoint. Okay, so right now the computer thinks, okay, you want to use all this clip. So until we make an out point, it thinks we want this whole shaded clip here. So we drag later in time. Let's say we want to stop right here. Now we click out point. The shaded area is what the computer now recognizes as that's the clip that we want. So we got our in point, we got our out point, and then now all we need to do is we need to get this clip down into our timeline. Now there are two ways to do that. The easiest way to do that is to actually just click right on the video, right in the center, grab and drop down, and then when we drop it down, see, it just drops down the clip that we isolated that's shaded in here. That's the only thing that it drags down. It didn't drag down the entire thing, only what had an in point and an out point. One thing, let me just show you real quick, just while we're here. Let's say we like this waterfall clip, but let's say we don't want the audio. Let's say we've got a bunch of music playing down here and we don't want the audio. What we can do is we can, as opposed to clicking in the center and dragging, what we can do is we can click right down here on the film strip. If we click on the film strip, click and drag, it only drags down the video. So especially if you're doing, there'll be all kinds of purposes for this, but especially music videos, things like that, you don't want the audio. You just want the quick shot of, whatever the video clip is. So you got the bracket tool method to make a cut. You got the razor tool method, and you have the in and out point method. As you get used to it, all of them you will use. All right, so we're going to start editing shortly, but first I want to go over one other principle aside from cutting, and this principle is sort of the principle of tracks and layers. And so what this entails is, let's grab the waterfall clip to illustrate. Okay, so if I have the waterfall clip in the timeline, and let's say I want to add the trees clip, okay? So if I click the trees and drag it directly over top of the waterfall clip that I just dropped in the timeline, if I drop that in there, well, guess what it does? It actually deletes the video clip there. So even if I drag this trees clip later in time, the video clip has now been deleted. Okay, so I don't want to do that. So I'm going to go edit, undo, edit, undo. All right, so now when I drag knowing that, when I drag the trees clip over, I'm not going to drag it directly over top. I'm just going to drag it above in the timeline. Okay, so now when I drag it above, when we play, space bar to play, and there we go. Now we see the trees. The reason why we see the trees here now, as opposed to the waterfall, is because the way the Premiere works is it works with all these video tracks over here. It shows the video clips based on the order of rank. So whichever video clip is higher in rank in these video tracks, that's the clip it's going to show. So if we drag the beach picture over right here, it's going to show the beach picture. We drag New York City later. Once it gets to New York City, because New York City is higher in the video tracks, higher in rank, it's going to show that clip. So if we hit play, what do we see? Waterfall, trees. Now what's coming? Beach. Now New York City. Okay, now the reason why the audio dropped out is because there is no audio left. The audio, which was attached to the waterfall clip, there is no audio anymore, so it's basically just silence. So now if I hit space again, we're not going to hear anything. We're going to see New York City all the way up until that clip is done, and then now we see the trees again. The reason why we see the trees again is because there's nothing above it in rank. It's the highest ranking video clip, and in fact, it's the only clip playing. Okay, so that's the way video clips work. Whatever clip is higher in rank based on these tracks, that's the clip that you're going to see. Audio does not work that way. Audio works the opposite. Audio works the exact same way as it works in Pro Tools or GarageBand or any audio editing software. The way audio works is, let's drag waterfall clip over. Okay, now let's drag our music clip over and drop the music clip underneath, not over top of, but underneath the waterfall clip. Okay, and then when we play, what's going to happen? We hear both at the same time, and then now we stop hearing the waterfall because that clip has ended, and we're essentially just hearing audio now with no video. Okay, so that's the main thing to keep in mind, is the way that Premiere reacts to video clips as opposed to audio clips. Audio clips layered on top of each other, it will play all audio clips simultaneously. Video clips layered on top of each other, it will look for the highest ranking video clip. Okay, the next thing to add to our toolbox is the zoom in and zoom out functions. If you look at your keyboard, the top right corner, you will see the plus and the minus keys. So what you want to do is you just make sure you're clicked down in your timeline, make sure the timeline has this blue highlight around it. And if you hit the plus key, guess what's going to happen? You're going to zoom in, and minus key will zoom out. And then down at the bottom here, you will see if you stretch out this bar right here, you can also zoom out and zoom in. You can see it's zooming in exactly where the blue playhead is located. And as well over here, we can also zoom in and zoom out on the video and audio tracks. So if I drag up, you can see it starts shrinking the tracks, and drag down, and you can see at a certain point it starts to show us the image there. And then down the audio track, same thing. If we select this bar here, click, hold, and drag, we can shrink the tracks, or we can make them larger. For audio, you can see how this would be helpful because you can start to see the waveform, especially if you're editing music videos. You probably want to edit. Sometimes you'll be editing with these waveforms, making cuts exactly at these sort of spike areas. Okay, so we've got our fresh empty timeline here. So let's grab the waterfall clip. We'll drag the waterfall clip over, and then let's drag the beach picture. Okay, I'm gonna drag the beach picture to the above in rank, but hugging the end of the waterfall clip. Okay, so what we're gonna do is let's click on the beach picture, and then let's go up into our effect controls window. So we just click on effect controls. And now what we see, we got a lot of parameters here. We're going to be focusing on the position parameter, scale parameter, rotation, and then opacity. Okay, so first one, position parameter. Anything that's highlighted blue, you can adjust. So the one on the left is the X value, the horizontal value, and the one on the right is the Y value, the vertical value. Okay, so if we click and hold down with our mouse, we can click and drag. And if I click and drag to the right, it adjusts that parameter, and you can see what it's doing. It's dragging it to the right on the X-axis. And then if I do the same thing, if I keep holding down and I go back to the left, it's dragging it to the left on the X-axis. Let's say I don't like what I've done. I want to go back to the beginning. I can just hit this little arrow loop here, which is, they're calling it reset parameter. Click on it, and you're back to the beginning. Okay, let's just try the Y value just for the heck of it. So if I click and drag to the right, it will start dragging it. It will obviously drag the image down in the Y value. If I click and drag to the left, it starts dragging it up along the Y axis. Okay. Again, I'll hit this reset parameter, go back to the beginning. But you can see, let's just drag, let's use the X-axis, let's just drag it to sort of split screen. And if I drag it right there, now let's play the video clip. And now you can start to see how this could become useful in the future. So we're playing it. So you can see with that effect, you essentially have your, that's your split screen effect. There are other ways to achieve split screen, but that's probably the easiest. Okay, now let's reset that parameter. And now let's go down to the scale parameter. Scale is another word for size. So automatically it's going to be set to 100%. So what we're looking at in our program window here, this is sized to 100%. So let's go up first. Let's take it to 150. What do we think is going to happen? It's going to zoom in. So obviously we lost the whole image, but we zoomed into the center of the image. Now let's do the opposite. Let's take it to 50%. And now 50%, you can see what that does. Now we're seeing the image at 50%. So if you apply the scale effect and the position effect at the same time. So let's say we take it to 50% and then take it over to the left here and down to the bottom corner. Now you can sort of see that picture-in-picture view that you see on, video game streaming channels, things like that. So that's sort of what you'll be doing. You want to be applying these effects in tandem. Okay, so let's hit this, let's hit our reset parameter. Reset parameter. Okay, so we did position. We're comfortable with scale. Scale is size. So now let's go down to rotation. We know what rotation is going to be. Rotation is going to rotate. So 45 degrees. Offhand doesn't strike one as useful, but it could become useful. Let's say you take the scale down to 50%. Again, if you start using them in tandem, you can start to see how you might use this effect at a certain point. Reset that parameter so we know what rotation is. So we've gone through position, scale, rotation. Now let's take a look at opacity. Now to look at opacity, I'm going to ask you to do one thing real quick. We're going to uncheck this this stopwatch here. They're calling it the animation. This is an animation keyframe. Let's turn that off. Make it not blue anymore. That's turning it off. And so now we're going to go over to opacity. Let's go over here. So again, set to 100%. So what we're looking at now over here is 100% opacity. Let's take it to 50%. 50%. Now you can see what opacity is. Opacity is essentially transparency. So if we click and hold on that little number there, if we take it back to 100, you can see what opacity does. It essentially, fades in and out the transparency. And then real quick, right below opacity, anybody who's used Photoshop, if you're familiar with Photoshop, you're probably familiar with the blend modes. So if you go down to blend mode, click on normal, and you can see all the blend modes from Photoshop are now in Premiere. So you can just toggle through those and see which one you like. There you go. So A lot of options. We'll just set it back to normal for now. So in effect controls, that's essentially the main ones you'll be using are position, scale, rotation, and opacity. And then the one thing to keep in mind, we are going to be going over effects shortly. When we apply effects to our clips, when we're applying more complicated effects to our clips over in this effects folder, those effects are going to show up in this effect controls window. So that's why we will want to get used to going to that window. And the last thing we're going to take a look at in the effect controls window is under opacity and above the 100% parameter, you have these shapes. You're probably wondering, what are those shapes? Those shapes, you have the oval, square, and you have the pen tool. Let's just start with the pen tool because the pen tool will sort of explain what this is. But this is going to create a mask. If you're familiar with After Effects, you're going to understand what a mask is. Basically, let's use the pen tool. And let's click on, let's just draw a shape. Let's draw a star as best we can draw it. All right, so what did that do? That created a mask. A mask is essentially, imagine you're using a pair of scissors. So I basically just took a pair of scissors to that video clip or to that picture of the beach. And so now a mask is created and we can see both clips at the same time. Let's just click on the timeline here. Let's play it. And so depending on the user, some users might look at that and think, you know, I'm definitely going to be using the mask tool. Some users might have little use for it, but that's how you would create a mask. Let's click back on it. Let's delete that. Let's click on the mask and delete it real quick. If you use the ellipse tool, if you click on the ellipse, just click, it automatically gives you, it creates an ellipse for you, and then you can just click and you can draw the exact type of oval or circle that you're looking for. And then if you don't want an oval, you can click on the mask over here, delete it. And finally, let's try the square mask. Click on the square. As you can see, it gives us a rectangle. We can stretch it out. We can create something funky with it, you know, if we want to do some sort of odd shape, or we can just do a larger version of a rectangle. Let's just do something weird. Let's hit play so you can see how it looks. And there you go. So we got oval, square, and pen tool if we want to create our own shape. Okay, and the next thing to get used to using in this effect controls window is this concept called keyframes. The keyframes, this is that stopwatch that we clicked off of. That relates to keyframes. So what keyframes are is the best thing to do is to just illustrate it. So let's go to, we're going to use scale. So let's, I'm going to use my plus and minus tool. I'm going to zoom in. So I'm going to go to the beginning of the clip right here. And what I'm going to do is the scale is set to 100. So I'm going to go over to the stopwatch and I'm going to click the stopwatch. And what the stopwatch is going to do, click, and it creates a keyframe. You can see it just creates this little keyframe right here. Hover over top of it, it says add remove keyframe. We're going to just leave it alone for now. Okay, so it created a keyframe, and all that keyframe does is it stores the number, this number 100. So the computer knows, the software knows that at this point in time, scale will be set to 100. Then what we're going to do is let's go later in time. Let's just go to the midway point and let's take the scale and let's just type in 25 and hit enter. Once we hit enter, it creates a second keyframe. We've just told the software at this point in time we want this keyframe to be set to 25. So now that we've set those two keyframes, what's going to happen? The computer is going to fill in the dots, basically fill in the blanks. We gave it 100 and then we gave it 25 and now it's going to fill in the blanks. So if we hit play, so essentially what you just witnessed, that concept of keyframes, that is how all animation works. You set one parameter, then you set a second parameter, and the software, the computer, fills in the blanks for you. So all you have to do is to set those keyframes. So now that we're familiar with most of the things inside this effects control window, let's just get rid of these keyframes. Let's delete, turn off the stopwatch, and let's click down here, zoom back out in time. And so next what we're going to do is we're going to go over and look at the effects folder, okay? Let's click on the effects folder. And what we're going to do is I'm going to apply two different effects. First I'm going to apply the blur effect, and then I'm going to apply the tint effect. These are just basic effects just to get you used to going in and out of the video effects folders. So in Premiere, in the effects folder, if we open up the video effects folder, hey, guess what? More folders. Okay, so the effects typically fall into a few categories. It would typically be, the main category would be adjusting the color. So adjust, channel folder, color correction, image control, and stylize. Those 5 folders are all pretty much going to relate to color, basically brightness and contrast and the tint of the color of the image. The blur folder is mostly pretty much what it says. It's going to be adding blurs to your image. The distort folder is, again, pretty much what it says. It's all different types of ways to sort of distort the image. The generate folder, that's where you can generate patterns, you can generate shapes, you can generate lens flares. That would be in the generate folder. The keying folder, that folder you will want to get used to. Keying is another name for green screen or blue screen, so all of our keying effects are going to be in that folder. And then perspective is pretty much the sort of adding like 3D rotations to images. So those are pretty much the main categories of effects. So first we are going to go into the blur folder, and let's just choose the Gaussian blur. So what we're going to do to apply any effect, what you do is you click on the icon, not the word, the icon next to the effect. Click, drag, and drop on top. You can see when we drop on top, I haven't let go yet, but if I drag on top, you can see how it highlights the clip. So if I drag over top, and then let's say I want to apply it to the beach, I let go, and now the effect is applied. The effect is applied, but nothing happened. So why did nothing happen? That's because we have to go back to our effect control window. Let's go up to effect controls, and we can see down here the Gaussian blur effect has been added to our effect control window. We see our mask tools here. We can actually apply this effect by using masks, but we're not going to do that for now. We're going to go over to our parameter, and let's just take it to 25 for now. I'm going to type in 25. And now you can see what 25% blurry means as far as this effect is concerned. So if we click and drag on the number, we can go up and down, and we can see it just gets blurrier and blurrier. So let's go back to 0. And for fun, let's actually use our keyframes. Let's go back to the beginning of the clip, and we'll set the blurriness to 0 with the stopwatch. Then let's go halfway through the clip and set the blurriness to 50. Hit enter. Creates the second keyframe. And now when we watch it, what's going to happen? We're going to see waterfall. Then here's our beach picture. It gets blurry, and now it stays blurry. It stops at 50%. So that's how we applied the Gaussian blur tool, and then we just animate it using 2 keyframes. Let's get rid of that effect. We'll click on it and delete it. So let's head back into our effects folder. Let's close the blur folder, and let's open up I believe it's the color correction folder. Okay, yeah, inside the color correction folder, now we're going to skip past these ones and head down to the tint effect. To apply the tint effect, do the same thing. We click on the icon next to tint, click on the icon, hold down, drag, and let's drop this one on top of the waterfall. Okay, drop it on the waterfall. Let's drag the playhead over to take a look. And we can see the effect is applied, but let's go up into the effect controls folder, and let's scroll down and see, oh, okay, here's our tint effect. And we can see what the parameters that we're going to be adjusting is basically this one parameter called map black to, second parameter is called map white to, and the last one is called the amount of tint, and it's set to 100%. Okay, so first thing we're going to do is let's change the map white to, let's change it from white. So let's just click on the color white, click. And let's just change it to red and hit OK. Now you can kind of see what tint does. It essentially just tints it. All of the lighter colors in the image, it tints towards this color that we just selected, red. Just for the heck of it, let's see what happens when we change the black. Let's click on the black, and let's just change it to white and see what that looks like. Hit OK. Okay, now you can see what this effect does. Now you can start getting into some sort of, some psychedelic type thing. So if we drag the playhead back in time and hit the space bar to hit play, now you can see what an effect like that could do. Let's just go back, and let's just click on the white again, change it back to black so it looks a little more normal, and hit space. So tint is just one of the many color type effects that you can add to your video. Okay, so we can click on tint and we can delete that, and we can close up our video effects folder. So we took a look at video effects. Now let's take a quick look at video transitions. What we're going to do first though is let's drag the playhead and I'm going to hit the plus sign to zoom in a little bit. And I'm just going to drag this beach picture right into the middle of the waterfall. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a transition to the beginning and to the end of this beach picture. So let's go over to the effects folder and open up the video transitions folder. So you can see video transitions also fall into different categories. We're going to go into the dissolve folder and we'll just use a cross dissolve. Now to apply that transition, you do it pretty much the same way. You click on the icon, not the word, but the icon. Click, drag over, still holding down on the mouse. And then what you want to do is, as opposed to the effects were dropped on top of the clip, transitions you have to drop either at the beginning of the clip or at the end of the clip. So we'll put this cross dissolve effect at the beginning of the clip, and you can see it once the software recognizes where you want to add the transition, it highlights the beginning section of the clip, and then you let go, and now you have applied that transition. The transition lasts all of 1 second, but if you want to make the transition longer, you can drag your mouse to the end of the transition. It turns into that bracket tool, the transition bracket tool. That's where you can drag it out and make it a little bit longer. So let's look at that real quick. Let's see what it looks like. Pretty simple transition. You've seen it before. So we've successfully applied that's the cross dissolve transition. So now let's go down and let's close the dissolve folder and let's look into the slide folder. Let's use one of these slide transitions. Just use slide. So click on the icon, drag, drop, let go, and now the transition has been applied. And let's just hit spacebar to watch it. We applied it successfully, but let's say we looked at it, we said, I don't like it. So we could just carefully make sure we click on the transition, not on the clip, but on the transition. And then we just hit delete to get rid of it. And let's just try one more. Let's try push. Let's see what push does. Now, let's say you're looking at the transition, but you're thinking, man, I would like to adjust that transition a little bit. So what you can always do is you can click on the transition, and when you click on the transition, it opens up this little window up in the top left corner, and that is where you can drag down and you can reverse it. If you want it to go in a different direction, you can add a border to it. So if we reverse it, then it will simply do the same transition, but we'll go in the opposite direction. Perfect. So let's go back to the beginning of the clip and let's just watch it real quick. Waterfall, transition, transition. So there are 8 different folders over here with different transitions in them. The cross dissolve is probably the most often used transition, but yeah, definitely take a look in that folder and try them all out. Okay, so now that we have somewhat of a sequence here, let's look into creating a title. Okay, so to create a title, we're going to go up to File, New, and we're going to choose Legacy Title. And it's going to ask you, do you want to name it? This is what it's going to be named over here in your project folder. So we'll just call it Title 1 for now. That's fine. Hit OK. So here's what it shows you. Okay, it shows you wherever your playhead is at in time. It's going to show that in your title screen. So let's drag this over, and this works pretty intuitively. You choose the type tool, and let's just type in our first title. Okay, but as you can see, we don't really like the color or the size of that. So what we'll do is just click, highlight it, and you can go up here. This is where you can change the size. So just click and drag, And now we can change the size, click back on the arrow tool, that way we can center it. Now let's go back to the text tool, highlight it, let's center the text, and now over here is where we can choose the font. So let's just go down and choose something just a little bolder maybe. Right here we could choose bold. Again, maybe make it a little larger. And then over to the right here, this is where we can change the color. Now we can add strokes and shadows and many different things, but for now, let's just change the color. Click on the white, and let's just change it to something we can see. So we'll change it to red. And there we go. And click back on the arrow tool. And we'll just drop it right there. And now we're done. So we'll hit X. So we created the title, but we don't see the title. Why is that? That's because the title is stored over in our project window. So you can see here's the title right here. The title that we just created. Look at the logo. The logo, it shares a logo with the still images because it is essentially a still image. So to add the title to our sequence, let's just click on the icon, drag it over. And as long as we don't drag it on top, we drag it above in rank, then we should be able to see everything. So now let's watch our video. Okay, now let's say we want to have the title have a transition. So as opposed to just popping up, we want it to have a transition. So let's go over to Effects, Video Transitions, and let's just go Dissolve. Let's just do the same thing. Let's add a cross dissolve to our text. And now let's watch that. Okay, that completes section 1 of Beginner's Guide to Adobe Premiere.